Hello, hello, beautiful ones. How are you doing? Now, bear with me while I get the post up on my laptop so I can see all of your beautiful comments, because sometimes it doesn't seem to work. But as you hop on and join me, say hello. Tell me how your weekend's been, if you had a good one. I'll update you on ours. So, while everyone's hopping on and joining us, bear with me, multitasking isn't my forte. So we went camping this weekend, which was absolutely lovely, really nice. I needed it, but I'm pretty sure I gave myself sunstroke, which is not unusual for me. If I'm really honest, I'm awful when it comes to knowing my limits with the sun. Let me know if this resonates with anyone. I think I was just so excited that the weather was good that I spent far too much time in the sun this weekend. Pretty sure, yeah. I woke up yesterday with the most banging headache and feeling like just really not good. And yeah, so pretty sure I gave myself sunstroke. But it was worth it because we had a great weekend. We went out with some friends, camping with the camper van. We played cricket on the beach. That was fun. It turns out I'm secretly good at cricket and I had no idea. So that was quite exciting. What's everyone else been up to this weekend? Unusual for me. If I'm bear with me. Honest, I'm some annoying woman talking in the background. So, welcome, huge welcome, day one of Summer of Self-Love. And I thought this was a really good time of year to be doing this work. We're in Pitta season. Pitta season is often a time when we can push ourselves too hard. And so actually this topic is really apt for this time of year and a perfect reminder of the work that we need to come back to. So how it's going to work is I'm going to be live in here every Tuesday, 10 o'clock for the next 4 weeks. And during that time, we will be having a live lesson. So if you can hop on and join me live, if you're available, that would be wonderful, because it's great to have the interaction with you. It's great to get your thoughts as we go through it. And it also helps me think about, we probably need to spend more time on this part and maybe less time on a different part. So yeah, as we go through it, I would love for you to interact with the video, even if you're not watching it live, because your interaction really does help me figure out where we need to spend more time in the course. And then each day following that lesson each week, which, like I say, 10 o'clock on a Tuesday for the next 4 weeks, this being week 1. Following that, for the 4 days following it, so it would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we will have a post in the group with a little task, a little challenge for you to really hone whatever that thing is, that lesson is that we're working on. So I hope that sounds fabulous to you. Saturdays will be more of a reflection day. So it will be like a journaling prompt, but I really would love for you to do the work behind that and share in the group, right? Share in the post what come up for you as you were journaling on that. What did it make you realize? What aha moments did you have? Because that's the idea of it, right? And that's when we get to see the difference. Louise, sorry you won't be able to comment. You're at the doctor's appointment and can be called in anytime. No worries, lovely. Gorgeous for you to be here. You can always come back to it and comment if there's anything you wanted to say. And I love your commitment that you're showing up from the doctor's office. Okay, so today what I wanted to go through with you is breaking down exactly what are the components of self-love, right? What does that mean? Because I don't know about you, but and I've had this conversation before, but for a while, self-love can have a bit of an ickiness for, like, that phrase can feel a bit icky to me. And the things that used to come up for me as I heard that phrase would be things like full of themselves, or, you know, if someone's got self-love, they're full of themselves, they think too much of themselves. And this shows you, right, where my shadows were. I might perceive someone to be arrogant if, you know, they said, oh, I've got lots of self-love. So we need to be aware of this as we go through this work, right? As you hear words, as you hear phrases, as you contemplate this work, thinking about, okay, what's the judgment I put on that? Because sometimes it's those judgments that are standing in the way of you moving forward with this. So, for example, if I continually told myself that people who respected themselves, people who, and like I say, I will break down what self-love is, but people that embodied self-love were arrogant or self-involved, then I would never allow myself to have that, right? So I would have to work through that barrier. And let's be honest, that barrier is obviously conditioning I've picked up from somewhere. I don't know about you, but I was very much taught you don't boast, you don't brag, you're always modest, because it's not the done thing, right? And so, and I can understand why my parents would have taught me that, because at the same time, you don't want your children going around bragging all the time and coming across as they think they're better than someone else, right? To me, that's what self-love kind of meant. It doesn't mean that, but that's what it meant in my head, that I thought if I embodied self-love, then I was saying to everyone, I'm better than you. And we know that's not the case, right? So let's break down what is self-love and what are the components of self-love, which we will be building over the next 4 weeks together. I was just about to say something else then and it's gone. No, it's gone. I'm going to just read Tam's comment. Oh, 1 minute. Let me have a look on my laptop because I can see comments better on there. Supposedly. Tam, you just felt you were completely unlovable. Self-love felt so far away from you. Not anymore. I love that. Awesome, lovely. Okay. So what do we mean by self-love? And yeah, it's just clicked what I was going to say. And as we go through this, what I would invite you to do is, as we think about these 4 different components of self-love, is to give yourself a bit of a score out of 10. So 1 being, you know, I'm not very good at that. 10 being, I'm excellent at that. I'm really on it with that. Because this will give you a bit of a marker as we start this journey. And then at the end of the journey, we're going to check back in with these numbers again and see what's changed. See where you still might want to spend some more time, more energy. See where you want to perhaps put more focus in your life. So I've broken it down into 4 main components, and these 4 main components are the real foundations of self-love. You cannot have self-love without these components, right? And what I would say is you're likely to find at least 1 or 2 where you're like, yeah, I could really get better at that. Even when I was putting this together, and I've done a lot of work on this, I'm like, yeah, I still fall into that old way of being. I still fall into that old conditioning. I still fall into X, Y, Z. So just be aware of that as we go through this today. And I've even looked up the definitions because I thought some of these seem like a bit of a lofty thing. And so how can we make it more tangible so we can really see it in our own lives? So number 1, to have real self-love, you have to have self-awareness. Self-awareness is the biggest key to self-love, unless you're just completely deluded and living in your own little world and not really caring about other people. If you are not someone who has, and I'm not talking about, I'm not meaning this in a jesting sense, I mean this from a clinical sense. So psychopathy or sociopaths tend not to worry about other people's opinion, other people's, actually worry is the wrong word. They cannot, it's not at the forefront of their minds like it is with the rest of us. So I don't know if you guys heard, I was listening to a really interesting podcast the other day, and it was on Happy Place, on Fern Cotton's podcast. And she was interviewing a woman who was a clinical sociopath. And she talked about her experience with that and finally getting a diagnosis and finally figuring out why she was different to other people. Like, she could see she was different to other people and she didn't feel things the same way. And I would highly recommend listening to it, because you realise, you know, often when we throw around words, right, like psychopath, sociopath, and I talk about this a lot with narcissists, we forget there's a person behind that. We forget there's a person that is actually experiencing something. And yeah, that experience may be different to us, but, you know, sociopaths, psychopaths aren't, you know, not everyone's out there hurting people on purpose. They're human beings trying to live their life. So I would highly recommend that podcast. I'll probably put a link in the group if anyone wants to listen. And it's fascinating for someone like me who has high degrees of empathy, like, to know, to listen to someone who's at the other end of the scale naturally is really interesting. And her relationship with her emotions and that side of things, fascinating. Anyway, we've gone off track. So number one, self-awareness. And the definition of self-awareness is the conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. So that's character, feelings, motives, and desires. So, and there's many ways that we can look at self-awareness, right? We have done so much work in this group on cultivating self-awareness through things like meditation, through things like journaling, through things about having that honest look at yourself. But the more that we can cultivate that, the more we can build that into our life, I genuinely believe the easier life is. And I'll give you an example of this. So yesterday, I woke up and, like I say, I had the most banging headache. I really wasn't feeling great. I had stuff I needed to get done and things I needed to do. And I was angry with myself for probably spending too much time in the sun. And then I could feel my mood just like, it reminded me of, you know, in Harry Potter with the Dementors. And the Dementors come in and they suck all the life out or something. I could feel this happening, like in about half an hour, like my mood being sucked out of me. And I could feel my mind starting to spiral. So it starts telling me everything that I am doing wrong, everything I'm not doing well in my life, everything that I could be better at. It starts criticizing me. You know, my brain goes into overwhelm. And I'm sat there thinking, this is interesting. Is this the effect of the sun? I thought, I don't think it is. It could be, perhaps it is. You know, if I'm not very well, often my mood will drop. Perhaps it's that. And then I thought, hang on a minute, where are we in the month? And I looked on my phone. I've got like a tracker where I keep track of my period and where that is in relation to the moon cycle. And I'd just gone into the phase where like, well, my period's due on Friday. So I was like, oh, okay, that's what's going on here. And just having that level of awareness of, oh, right, okay, this isn't me. This isn't my thoughts. This, you know, I don't have to believe my thoughts. I don't have to get sucked into this mood. I don't have to allow that to run away with me. I can just be aware of that. Oh, okay. So yeah, I've probably got a bit of sunstroke. I've got a headache, not feeling very well. I'm feeling tired because of the weekend. My period's due at the end of this week, which means I'm in that phase where actually I just want to retreat from the world. And if I'm not careful, my mood drops during this time of the month. So just having that level of awareness was a bit like, okay, that's fine. I can deal with that now. Rather than allowing those thoughts to spiral and bring me down. Loving the analogies today. Yeah. The Dementors. So self-awareness, first and foremost, if we want to cultivate more self-love, if you can feel that this is an area that you want to create more of, like I look at my life and I know I can still do this after many years of work, and it will be a lifetime's work, and it is something I constantly have to be conscious of, is that I don't go into those spirals. So number one is having that self-awareness. And like I say, sometimes it's the physical things, right? Period being due. I also know if I have an extra glass of wine, so one glass of wine doesn't affect my mood, tend to be fine. If I have 2 glasses of wine on an evening, the next day my mood is dropped because alcohol is a depressant. So I was like, oh, okay, right. So sometimes you don't want to know these things. But also having that awareness, if you do have that extra glass of wine the next day, you're like, yeah, I know why I'm feeling crappy. And it's not a hangover, right? So, you know, looking at the physical things, like, am I getting enough sleep, right? If my mood is dropped, am I getting enough sleep? Am I eating the right things? Am I moving my body? Am I doing those things that actually help me? But it's also having the self-awareness to look at your thoughts and go, my mind is spiraling. My mind is spiraling today. And it is important to go, right, okay, what's led to this? What triggered this? What was the thing that is making me spiral? And noticing what criticism you come up with for yourself. So often the criticism that will happen in my mind will be things that I remember parents criticizing me for, or teachers criticizing me for. And at some point I took them on as truth. Even though I know they're not, they're still just shadows of the past. They still come up, right? They still might, often in times when it's difficult or challenging, or I've made a mistake, I've done something that I'm not proud of, then all of those criticisms from the past start playing out in my mind. But when we have self-awareness, we then have the choice of whether to go down that spiral or not. Okay, I'm hearing that criticism again, yet that's not proportionate to what I'm experiencing. That isn't actually true. That's not an accurate reflection of this situation. So giving yourself that opportunity to kind of, and I wouldn't even say challenge it, but just accept, oh yeah, that's not true. Yeah, that's not true. That was a criticism to a child that perhaps didn't even deserve that criticism because they were a child. So self-awareness, number 1, give yourself a mark out of 10. 1 being, I'm not self-aware at all. 10 being, I am so self-aware. And when I say self-aware, I don't mean self-critical. I mean self-aware. So like I say, I know if I don't get enough sleep, my mood drops. I know that if I make a mistake, my mind is likely to go into a spiral about things I was criticised as a child. I know that one thing I will condemn myself for, or the voice in my head will condemn myself for, is if I rest, I criticise myself for being lazy. And that is because I remember as a child, I was never a tidy child, right? I was a creative child. So I was a kid that never wanted to tidy that bedroom. And I remember my mum constantly saying to me, stop being lazy. You're being lazy. Tidy your room. And so I have that in my head whenever I rest. Stop being lazy, Holly. Stop being lazy. And so having the self-awareness of that, it doesn't necessarily make it go away, but it just makes me go, oh yeah, that's from that. That's not in relation to this. I am allowed to rest. I am allowed to take it easy. Is that making sense? I'm hoping that's making sense. But give yourself a score, 1 to 10. Self-awareness. Where are you now? Okay. And feel free to pop it in the comments if you want that added accountability. Number 2, self-compassion. So self-compassion involves treating oneself with kindness and understanding, especially during times of failure or difficulty. So self-compassion, again, I really struggled with this, right? I tend to teach the things that I've struggled with the most. And again, I have struggled with this concept of self-compassion because, again, a lot of the conditioning I received growing up was around things like, you know, we weren't a huggy family. We weren't what do you call it? We weren't like a real kind of nurturing family. There wasn't hugs or kisses or things like that. And it was all quite standoffish, you know, it was like British. My parents were boomers. So, you know, and, you know, my dad was probably, so my dad's 80 now. So they had me quite late in life and they were a different generation. And my dad has certainly got softer as he's got older. But yeah, that kind of talking about feelings and being kind to yourself and being compassionate was not something that I saw demonstrated, and it wasn't something that was particularly encouraged. In fact, it was probably, I wouldn't say the opposite, but you know, my dad has got a very strong work ethic and would work very hard, work very long hours. He was very disciplined with himself. He was very disciplined with his money. Don't get me wrong, he had he had interests in a lovely life, but he believed in working hard for what you wanted, and being kind of self-sufficient was a really big thing for him. So, and I admire that, and I still admire that, and I'm thankful for that, because that work ethic has served me well in my life. It has, you know, I did well in my career. I started a business, which I never would have done had I not had that sense of, well, if you want something, you just work for it and you make it happen. But inadvertently, this work ethic also meant that I thought I couldn't ask other people for help. I couldn't get support. If something went wrong, it was my fault. I was really hard on myself. My inner critic can be quite loud. And that inner critic is quite self-destructive, because if I listen to it, it will just send me into a spiral, and I'll go into like a freeze state and I won't get anything done. I will self-sabotage. I love that term. you have to work every day to maintain and push on being self-aware. Yeah, it's not just there's not like a light bulb that switches on one day. It's this constant awareness, right? Anyway, so self-compassion to me felt like this, and I had 3 brothers as well. So I grew up in a house, well, with 3 brothers. My older 2 brothers had moved out not long after I was born. But there was this real kind of, there was less female influence, you know, the nurturer, that kind of thing. My mum wasn't particularly a nurturer, not necessarily in her, I wouldn't even say it's not in her nature, because of things that she had experienced and her conditioning and her trauma. So this idea of self-compassion was just like a little bit alien to me for a really long time. And it was through the practices of things like meditation, Reiki. Reiki was a big one for my self-compassion. It allowed me to see how much I was struggling half the time, and just I would push it down, push it down, push it down, because I didn't know what to do with it. I couldn't look at it and go, God, Holly, you've got a lot on at the moment. Go have a bath, relax, get yourself into bed, read a good book, you know, chill out. I couldn't do that. It was do the next thing, do the next thing, do the next thing. And if I'm not careful, I can still do that. So this has to be at the forefront of my mind most of the time. So self-compassion is also being aware of when that self-criticism kicks in. We all have it. It's all there. We all have that inner dialogue that likes to tell you everything that you've ever done wrong. And, you know, anyone else sometimes wake up or like trying to get to sleep 2 o'clock in the morning, and then your brain starts telling you about something that happened 20 years ago, like a mistake you made. So we all have that voice, right? So it's not about eliminating that, but about when that voice kicks in going, oh yeah, I can hear that voice, but that's not true. And actually, do you know what? I've worked hard. I deserve to rest. Perhaps I need to get more sleep. You know, being kind to yourself like you would a best friend. And this reminds me of when I was doing my coach training. So not my Ayurveda coach training, my corporate coach training. So many years ago. Bear with me. Let me have a sip of coffee. Bear with. It's my one coffee of the day, and I've allowed it to go cold, which is not good. I remember doing my coach training, and we came across that coaching question of what would you advise a friend to do in this situation? And this was like a bit of a light bulb moment for me, when I realised, oh my God, I find it so easy to give compassion to everyone else. I mean, literally. I remember my daughter saying to me once, we were having a conversation about World War II, like you do. And she was talking about Hitler and how he was evil and stuff. And I personally don't believe in the concept of evil. I believe that it is possible to make someone evil. And I believe, you know, you would never look at a baby, right, and go, that baby is pure evil. I've never met a baby that I thought was, you know, Satan incarnated. And so I was talking to her about what I understood of Hitler's early life and why it led to him becoming what he became. And I remember her saying to me, are you literally making excuses for Hitler? And I was like, no. No, I am not making excuses for Hitler. But I find it so easy to look at other people and go, you know, well, it's obvious why they've done that thing, because those things happened. And I'm not relinquishing responsibility from anyone or anything like that. But often you can see, right? You can see what led to them behaving the way they do, or doing the thing that they did. I can't even remember where I was going with this. Oh, and then, so when I was in this coaching training, I realized like I can literally have compassion for anyone other than me. And it was a bit of a, whoa, that's interesting. Why, why have I allowed this to go on for so long was kind of the thing that came to me, because it's not a question, we don't even need to know the why, right? We don't need to know why we've got no self-compassion. All we need to know is that we don't want to live like that anymore. And as soon as you make that decision, then begins the work of, okay, so when I catch myself being self-critical, I lean in further to the self-compassion, and it will feel weird and it will feel uncomfortable. And I might have to journal through why I'm finding this so difficult today. But that self-compassion is vital, especially if we want to do things in our life that put us outside of our comfort zone. So self-compassion, I find that easy when life is going swimmingly, right? When I'm not making mistakes, when I'm on form, when everything's smelling roses, and I feel like, oh, I'm a good person, my little ego. But when things are going wrong, when, relationships are tough, when perhaps career or business isn't going like I want it to, when my health isn't great, it is so easy, right, to then go, well, I'm the problem. I'm the problem. It's my fault. And then start being mean to yourself. I don't know about you, but I would never be that mean to other people, ever. And this is the time when we need the self-compassion the most. So when you think about this idea of self-compassion, I invite you to think about not just the times it's all going well, right? Because we don't really need to think about it then. It's the times when it's not going so well, when perhaps you've made mistakes, when you've done things you regret, when you feel like you should be doing more, when there's this thing that you want to change, but you just can't seem to find the motivation to do it. It's in these times that self-compassion is really the kind of, it's pretty amazing how much a situation can turn around the minute you start being kinder to yourself. And I've had this with clients, right? Clients that have struggled to lose weight. The minute they stop beating themselves up and start being kinder to themselves, that changes. I have clients where they're struggling with like an addiction of some sort. So that might be an addiction to their phone. It could be an addiction to a substance. It could be addiction to work or exercise. Again, the minute you start introducing more self-compassion into that situation, those things start to unravel themselves. So self-compassion is like this natural painkiller. Now, I get, if you're anything like me, or like me probably 20 years ago, you're likely to be thinking, yeah, but that self-criticism keeps me achieving things. Yeah, but that self-criticism helps me to grow. There's a difference, right? There's a difference between looking at something from a growth mindset and going, okay, so it didn't go so well this time, or that thing didn't work out well. What can I learn from this? What do I want to take forward from this? As opposed to, that thing didn't work out because I'm stupid, or I'm not good enough, or I don't know what I'm doing and I should just give up now. Do you see what I mean? And I often see this in when I'm working with clients who are building a business. I often see the ones that struggle the most are the ones that take it all personally. I'm not getting enough clients. I must be bad. There must be something wrong with me. Rather than going, and this is where we miss the actual learning because we're too busy criticizing ourselves, looking at it logically. I'll be like, well, what are your numbers saying? How many people are looking at your posts? What is the strategy you're using? And when you can look at it from that point of view, you're like, yeah, no, it's not I'm bad, I'm wrong, I can't do this. I just need to look at it logically, right? So self-compassion, scale of 1 to 10, give yourself a score now. 1 being, I have 0 self-compassion. 10 being, I am so compassionate with myself. I am my own inner mother. I am, and that's where we all hope to get to, right? Where we can be as kind and compassionate as we would hope to be to our children or to our best friend. We can offer that same compassion to ourselves. So give yourself a score out of 10. Self-compassion. So, and a reminder, the definition involves treating oneself with kindness and understanding, especially during times of failure or difficulty. So that's number 2. Number 3, my favorite word, self-care. So the definition of self-care is the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health and well-being. So again, thinking about that score, 1, I don't take care of myself. 10 being, I take care of myself so fully that my cup is always runneth over. I would love to know where you feel you are in that. And what I would say, I'm saying a lot today, I appreciate. Thank you for bearing with me. I know people, I've had clients who have convinced themselves they're brilliant at self-care, whereas actually what they're brilliant at is self-criticism and criticizing themselves so much that they take lots of action around things. So for example, I had a client who was, in her mind, healthy, really healthy. And it's not for me to say whether someone's healthy or not. That's very much down to them. And after working together, she could see the change, right? So she thought she was really healthy, but what in reality she was doing was using exercise and food as a kind of punishment. So she didn't feel good enough in herself. So she would exercise as like a punishment to herself because she didn't feel good enough. She used to do the same thing with food. So she would deny food. She cut out loads of food groups, and was just eating barely anything, really, if I'm honest, as this kind of self-punishment, but labeling it as being healthy. So self-care, and I've mentioned this before and I talk about this a lot, self-care is as much about the energy in which you're doing the thing as the thing you're doing. So self-care isn't, I'm going to go to the gym and, work out for half an hour and do that from a place of, I'm not good enough, so I'm going to do it. It's going to the gym, if you like the gym, going to the gym and thinking, I'm going to do this because I'll feel better afterwards. It helps my mental health. I like the fact that I feel stronger when I've been doing this. It's really important for me to feel healthy and have the energy to play with my kids. Do you see what I mean? Rather than self-care being used as this kind of punishment. The other thing I want to say about this is self-care obviously encompasses mind, body, and spirit. If you don't resonate with the word spirit, then I would say energy, emotional health, connection. So self-care isn't just what you're eating, right? It's not just how much you're exercising. We know this in here, but I just wanted to remind you as you look at this, it's making choices that are going to be supportive to you in the long term as well as the short term. And that's not necessarily the healthy option, right? I feel like I need to talk into that a bit. So what I mean is sometimes the self-care you need in the moment is that cookie, right? You don't need to lecture yourself about how you shouldn't have the cookie and how it's not good for you when there's too much sugar in there. Sometimes it's having the self-awareness to go, I'm going to treat myself to a cookie and I'm going to be mindful and I'm going to enjoy it and I'm going to savor every mouthful. That can be self-care, because it might take you back to that little girl who got a treat on, like I remember on a Friday, my mum used to take me to the local bakery. I love a bakery now, and my husband works at the bakery, which is super exciting. And I would get something like a gingerbread man or an iced bun. And I still remember like being so excited to go to the bakery on a Friday. So of course I allow myself the occasional treat. Of course I do, because that brings me such joy and happiness. So when we're thinking about this self-care, remember to consider that it doesn't have to look like anyone else's version. This gets to be yours. This gets to be the ultimate self-care for you. Only you know what you need. Only you know what is good for you, right? So as you score this, have a think about this holistically rather than say the Western version of health. So how would you rate self-care on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I'm rubbish, I don't care for myself, 10 being I am so good at taking care of myself, I am the ultimate mother of me? Okay. And number 4, final foundation, is self-respect. So self-respect, let me read out the definition again. Self-respect involves valuing oneself and maintaining a sense of dignity and integrity. So that might look like how you show up in relationships. It might look like the boundaries that you're setting. It might look like how you allow other people to treat you. It might look like the dreams and desires you allow yourself to have. It might look like the life that you decide that you want to create. So say, for example, your self-respect is low. You might find that you're more willing to take a job that when you're worthy of so much more. A job that, you know, perhaps runs you into the ground, or perhaps is not worthy of your talents, or perhaps is not what you want to do. Perhaps you put up with a boss that is notoriously bad at, you know, pitching in, and you end up taking the brunt of his work as well as your work. I don't know why I said him. It could be a her, right? In relationships, you know, you might allow your partner to treat you in a way that isn't supportive, and doesn't make you feel good. You might allow your inner voice to talk to you in a way that isn't good. You might allow, what else might you allow? Many things. You might decide that you're not worthy of your dreams, right? So perhaps you've always wanted to be an artist and had dreams of going to art school, but always told yourself that that didn't happen for people like you. You didn't have enough self-respect to actually give that a go. So you conformed to something that you thought you should be worthy of. So this can be a challenging one for women. And the main reason being the conditioning we receive as women. So often we are taught not to respect ourselves. We are taught, and I'll give you some examples of the conditioning we receive as women, right? So we've got to be sexy, but not too sexy. We've got to be, like, especially as mothers, right? As mothers, you're not allowed to be too sexy either, because otherwise that's just inappropriate. As women, like, if something awful happens, we see the press and media, right? What was she wearing? What was she doing out that late? Why was she walking home on her own? How much had she had to drink? Those sort of things, when there's been like an assault or something, that conditioning is still with us. I appreciate that happens less often now, but many of us grew up at a time when that was blatant. That was blatantly said, and you would have heard people making comments like that, like, it's her own fault. Like, even in our language, so things like when we talk about sports, or I remember in PE being told, don't throw like a girl. Like, what does that mean? Don't throw like a girl. I remember it used to wind me up because I had 3 brothers, and so I'm like, I used to try even harder. But many of us have received this conditioning over the years that, women aren't as good as men, women aren't as intelligent as men, yet we're expected to do more often, Not so much now, but it's not that long ago that women were expected, when they went back to work, if they were in work, to still have to take care of the whole household, right? So inadvertently, many of us have got this sort of conditioning. And then put on top of that other conditioning you might have received around self-respect. So it could be, I'll from my experience of getting ill and having a condition that absolutely changed my mobility half the time, really challenged some of my conditioning that I didn't even know was there around, I remember I don't know if it was my mum or my dad, but I remember like conversations around things like, if people weren't working, then they were lazy. Even if they had a condition, there seemed to be this, and you hear it when we talk about politics, right? The lazy people that are all on the dole. But so many of those people are too unwell to work. Yet, in my head, inadvertently, I'd still attached the two together. You might have heard conditioning around so much, anything that you feel makes you different to perhaps other people, whether that's the colour of your hair, the colour of the skin, the colour of, I don't know why I'm going colours here, or your personality, right? How many people as a child were told they were too sensitive? They need to man up. They need to stop taking things so personally. So my daughter's got ASD. And one of the things with ASD is she is highly sensitive, highly sensitive, struggles with criticism, struggles even if it's well-meaning criticism. You know, to her it's like a knife in the chest. She really struggles with it. And if we're not careful, and like even when I didn't know she had ASD, I probably inadvertently made her feel bad about that without even trying. You know, I remember us having conversations around, you know, they probably didn't mean it that way. And she's like, and she would get super defensive. She's like, why are you defending them? And I'm like, I'm not defending them, honey. It's not about defending them. I'm just trying to help you see that it's often, if people say things, it's not about you. It's about what's going on for them. It's about where they are. And because of her having ASD, this was super challenging for her. And she can still really, although this is something that she's more aware of now, she can still find that's her default. And my point being with all of that is, you know, if we grow up being told that we're too lazy, too sensitive, too, or not enough, then it can be really challenging to view ourselves in a way that is worthy of the respect. So again, if this is something you struggle with, and it is something I've certainly struggled with, I tend to look at it from a third person point of view. If this was my friend experiencing this, if this was my daughter experiencing this, if this was my son experiencing this, you know, how might I be viewing this situation differently? What advice would I be giving them? And that can be a good way to kind of hack your mind if this doesn't come naturally to you, having self-respect. And I think for many of us, I would say most of us, unless we grew up in a very stable, settled household, which I don't really know many people that did, then this is something we have to work on. This is something that is important. If we want to do things with our lives and we want to feel good about ourselves, then self-respect and building that is hugely important. And having those things in place, like boundaries, I'm important too, right? Often this is an area where I can slip up. I would say this is my worst area out of the four. The main reason being that if it's someone I don't like, I find this quite easy, right? Boundaries with someone I don't like, easy, you know, no thank you. So I can do that really well. If it's someone I really love and care about, I really struggle to say no, sorry. And it is something I have to be really conscious of, because my mind immediately goes to, you're being nasty, Holly, you're being unkind. Especially if it's like, Mum, can I have a lift? We don't have that anymore. My kids both drive. And you know what? I think the reason they both learnt to drive so quickly and got cars is because I was getting stronger and stronger with my boundaries of saying, no, if you want a lift, you need to give me notice, because I've got things to do, and, you know, and I'm not going out at night time. That's my time. That's when I wind down. Again, can't remember where I was going with that, but self-respect is often something we all can do a little bit better on. So 1 being, I don't respect myself at all. 10 being, do you know what? I really do. I've worked really hard on this. I've got some really firm boundaries in place. I catch myself in those times when I want to cave on my boundaries and I'm really firm. I would love to hear what score comes up for you. Okay, lovelies. So today, this is all you need to do. We're just doing a check-in. Where am I? And as we go through these 4 weeks, hopefully you will see an improvement of these scores. And in fact, I'm not going to say hopefully, of course you will. Of course you're going to see an improvement in these scores because you're going to show up and you're going to do the work, and it's going to happen. So how it's going to work for the rest of the week is, like I say, between now and Saturday, there will be a post in this group, and I will also put it on the platform every day till Saturday, with your kind of task challenge for that day, your focus for that day. And that might include things like journaling prompts. It might include meditations. It might include a video that I've recorded about a particular topic. It might be an activity to do. But I'm going to be drawing on the tools that have helped me the most in these areas. Like I say, I'm still so much a work in progress in this, and it fluctuates, right? This isn't a linear path. This isn't oh, I've got it now. It's depending on what's going on in your life. But like I say, the times when it is difficult, the times when life is challenging, the times when you've screwed up, the times when it feels like you're getting it all wrong. We've all had those times, right? Where it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can someone give me a rule book? I don't know what I'm doing. It's in those times that we need these things the most. So I hope this will be a useful practice for you. I will also put some notes in the platform area under this video. So for those of you that found me a bit waffly today, you can have a look at the notes and it might be a bit clearer. Otherwise, I will love you and leave you, wishing you a beautiful rest of your day. And yeah, just be a bit aware of these 4 areas as you negotiate the rest of your day. That's it. That's all you have to do. All right, lovelies. I will see you soon. Thanks so much for joining me. And I will post in here tomorrow. Take care.